questions that you've sent in. I'm now joined by our Labour candidate, Jenny Bone. Please could you explain to me why I should bother voting at all, what difference it makes, and what the difference is between what you do, the Town Council and Central Beds Council do? How does it all work together? And if my taxes are paying for all of this and we need to save money, can we get rid of some of it?
Right, we'll start at the beginning of that. Why bother voting at all? Apart from the suffragette movement, which is why I vote, actually the individual person does make a difference, because there are actually so few people actually take up their vote. On average, only 60% of the electorate vote. And to give you some statistics on that, in 2005, the Conservatives won with 48.3% of the vote. So that's 48.3% of the turnout, which actually meant, when you boil it all down, of the 94,500 people that could have voted in this constituency, only 22,000 voted Conservative, which is nowhere near a majority of the people. So the individual, so when you take it down to the individuals, it's less than 50% of the people who turned out to vote. So you actually do make a difference, because you are, as a percentage of the people who bother to turn out, quite significant. So yes, it is. Your vote does count, and no matter how you vote, you should vote, because otherwise your voice is being heard. On the issue of national and local government and the TS system, that's it. The last thing you would actually want would be somebody in Westminster worrying about your rear extension. If everybody in the country had their applications for rear extensions going to Westminster, they would just be completely swamped, and they wouldn't have a clue about the local issues. And ending up having to try and send somebody out in a car from Westminster to Carlisle would just be ridiculous. So that's why you have local government. And the reason you have national government is because you don't want somebody sitting in central beds worrying about how much national insurance you're going to pay. It's got to be a national issue. You've got to think of the big things on the big scale, and you've got to sort out the local things on the local scale. There are efficiencies that can be made. I work for a local council and in Buckinghamshire, and one council deals with the payroll for all of Buckinghamshire, because it would be silly to have lots of different payroll departments for each of the different councils. So they have one, and that goes on all over the place. And sometimes it's done with single departments being controlling all of them, or like recently when we've got now the Central Beds Unitary Authority instead of the district councils that we used to have. So that's made more efficiencies in things like not having several different departments looking after the bin men and looking after grass cutting and all those points. But equally, they are things that you really do need to do at a local level. So when you look at the difference between your local elections and your general election, you've got to think about what is your candidate going to do, and how you vote for in your local elections and your national elections may be different, because you've got to say, is this person that I'm voting for going to worry about transport policies around here and housing policies around here, and things like how much development goes on is a local issue. Whereas things like climate change, tax, fuel duty, they're national issues. So maybe the person that you want might be different to deal with your national issues to your local issues.
My wife's employer encourages flexible working, but often she has to travel to London 2 to 3 times a week. When buying a train ticket, she has to buy individual tickets for each journey at an inflated price compared to a yearly season ticket. When central government should be encouraging mothers back to work and flexible working, what incentives would your government introduce to encourage home and flexible working and not penalise those who commute to London less than 5 days a week?
That's a very long question for a very short answer. And that there are already schemes in place, not on the trains, but for example, if you go and buy, you go to Dover to Calais on the ferry regularly, you can buy a multi-trip ticket. And I used to live, jokingly, on the edge of the earth on one of the isles in Scotland, And the ferries there also ran you bought a 10-trip ticket or a 5-trip ticket, and you got the benefits of buying in bulk savings. And I think that the train companies should be introducing something very similar, since there's already the precedent for that type of scheme to be running. And I used to have to go into London for university regularly, and again, it would have been very helpful to be able to have bought a multiple trip ticket and had the same sort of savings as the people who've got annual tickets or monthly tickets.
Do you think parents or the state are responsible for bringing up children?
Yes. I've got a little boy who's 1, bless him, and so we have a childminder because our household can't afford to go down to 1 income. And although theoretically, idealistically, I am responsible for my son, he spends 10 hours a day with this childminder. And bless her, she's absolutely fantastic. And she is ultimately a third parent to David, because 10 hours a day of his waking life, he's with her most of the day, much as it sort of pains me to say it, but he does spend more of the time with her. So when you go on to school, and you're spending, when children are spending a lot of their waking life at school, there is a responsibility of the school for the care and upbringing of the child. I know that they're just for education and they're not there just as free childcare. But for example, with the case of that little boy in Stockport, nobody bothered to phone an ambulance because they were too busy while he was having an asthma attack. Now I think they failed in their duty of care to look after that child. I think that is where you've got the crossover between the state, which is the school, looking after that child.
In that case, assuming the CSF bill will not make it through the washer, what are your plans for elective home education?
I think that home education is something, I mean the Children's Schools and Families Bill should be welcomed, because although the vast majority of homeschool children are getting a good education and their parents are doing it with the child's best interests, sometimes children can fall through the cracks, and it is important for authorities to be able to go in and just see how things are going. It's not so that somebody's going to come and stand over people and make sure that they're not harming their children. It's so that it could be a two-way street, and I think actually I would hope that if the CSF bill doesn't go through, that it's reworded and it does go through in some way, because I think that some controls need to be in place to make sure that homeschool children are getting the best education they can. Because sometimes, best will in the world, the parents may not know the national curriculum and the best way to teach it. They may not have the same resources as schools, and it could be a two-way street to saying, well, I could do with some help teaching this part of the curriculum, and just leaving parents to it might not be the best way about it.